So my name is Brenda Winiarski. I am the founder of Cook for Love, and welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to be doing some Thanksgiving prep. Most of the recipes that we're making today, if not all, no, everything but the gravy, can be kind of stuck in the freezer and waiting for you then on Thanksgiving. We're going to start with doing some of the prep work for different recipes. So it's going to be a little bit discombobulated in the beginning of this while we're toasting our bread for the stuffing, while we're boiling our potatoes for our veggie patties. So, but then it should kind of be able to go from there, from one recipe to completion. Fingers crossed. So, are we ready? Sarah, how many people do we have now? Should we start or still continue to talk? Okay, excellent. I have Sarah in my ears, so she is letting me know if there's any issues because I cannot read the screen while I'm doing this. So if you have any questions, she'll see them on Facebook Live and she will relay them to me. We're going to try to do a cook-along today. So hopefully everyone kind of has their ingredients prepped and their stuff diced so we can kind of move from one recipe to the next. So we're going to start by turning on the oven to 225 degrees. We're just going to dry out our stuffing. So if you look at the stuffing recipe, it is, how I used to have it done was I made one recipe that was both high and low protein. So there was low protein bread for the low protein version and high protein bread or regular bread for the high protein version. But it led to some confusion with some people. So right now it's listed on the site as just using low protein. Now, what I do when I'm making this is I do 2 slices of bread per serving that I'm looking for that's low protein. And I cook the whole recipe. And I take 3/4 of the mixture and I put it into a high protein stuffing and 1/4 of the mixture into the low protein. That way I'm just doing really basically one recipe for everyone and just dividing the breads. I would be very, very happy eating the low protein stuffing, but Molly is now at the point where if it's made, I make stuffing breads specially for stuffing, and she wants to keep all of that for herself. So we don't do that anymore. We have 2 separate versions. So stuffing bread is pretty much the same as Cook for Love's sandwich bread, but it has a few differences just to enhance the flavor. So instead of rice milk, you're using vegetable broth. There's some onions and some celery and some spices added to it. The recipe is on Cook for Love. You do not need it for this, nor do you need Cook for Love's bread. You can use whatever gluten-free or low-protein bread that you like, and it will work fine in this recipe. So let me just see. Hang on. Let me go here. Okay, so I just switched angles and hopefully that worked without any issues. So this is the Cook for Love stuffing bread. So it's a little bit darker in color than the other one, and you can see little flecks of herbs and things like that. So all you're going to do here, now you could just cube it. I like it better when it's sort of torn and a little bit more rustic. It just has more craggly edges that can kind of get a little bit crisp. So you're just going to take your 2 slices of low protein bread and you're going to pull it apart. And you're going to make pieces about that size. And then you're going to put it on a baking sheet and you're going to stick it in the oven for about 30-40 minutes until it's dry. I apologize to everyone. I'm going to set Alexa so I remember to take the bread out because we're doing a lot of different things, and I know I'm going to be setting your Alexas. Sorry about that. Hang on. So I already did one of my slices of bread. So now this is my second one. And I want it on a single layer on a baking sheet. And what I do here when I'm doing stuffing bread is I freeze slices of it, but I also usually make a full mason jar of dried stuffing bread that I have in my pantry so that we can have a fancy meal every once in a while. So that's the stuffing bread, single layer. It's going into the oven. I apologize, my third camera is not working, which is the one that's right by the stove, so we'll have to kind of shift back and forth. So, Alexa, set timer for 30 minutes.
30 minutes, starting now. Okay.
So that is toasting. Oops, sorry. And while that is toasting, we're going to peel our potato, and this is what we're using for our the jerky or our vegetable patty. So we're going to peel the potato. And if you look at the vegetables that are used in the vegetable patty, the only reason why I picked those ones is because they are vegetables that I'm already using and I'm already dicing up for different entrees and sides. So I have my onions and my celery done for the stuffing, and we always have roasted Brussels sprouts as one of our sides. So I have those done as well. But it could be any dry vegetable. So you could have carrots in there in place of the Brussels sprouts. You could have broccoli. It's kind of whatever your kid likes. What I love about this recipe is, like I said, you can really, really vary the vegetables. So if you have a kid who's a little bit particular and a little bit fussy, you can kind of change the vegetables but keep it looking the same. So sometimes you can introduce new flavors without them even realizing it. So, okay. Peeling this potato. And normally we have mashed potatoes, so that just gets boiled too. All right, so now I'm going to switch over here. And what we're going to do is just cut this in 6 pieces. I'm going to cut out that little bit that's not good. Oh, it's really starting to pour here. Okay. And we're going to put that in a pot. Sarah's telling me I'm going to cut myself on live TV. Probably true. All right, I'm putting the potatoes in the water, and I'm going to throw some salt in that water too, just so that the potatoes have some flavor. And it's on. So that's going to come to a boil, and we're going to wait till that softens. So it probably will be about 20 minutes. So I'm going to set Alexa again. Alexa, set timer for 20 minutes.
Second timer, 20 minutes, starting now.
So the next thing that we kind of have to prep before we dive into all of the recipes is in the stuffing recipe, we take dried cranberries and we soak them in apple juice and we simmer them. And the whole reason behind that is it replumps the cranberry so that it has a little bit, it's not quite as dry, and it also infuses some nice apple flavor with it, and there's apples in the stuffing, so it just is very, very nice. So I have here my cranberries and my applesauce, and again, not my applesauce, my apple cider. And again, I'm only doing the recipe for 2 slices, so I've reduced the recipe. So if you look at the recipe, it says servings 10. I just brought it down to 2, and that's what we're going with for now. So that's going to go in a pan like this. It's going to go in, and we're just going to let it absorb what's left of that apple cider. So that was just about 2 tablespoons of cranberries and 2 tablespoons of apple cider. And that's just going to go on a low simmer. And that's all of our basic stuff kind of going. And now we're going to go from one recipe to the next. So we're going to start with biscuits. Now, these make-ahead biscuits, sorry for walking off, are one of my favorites. Let's see, let me go back here. One of my favorite recipes for a few reasons. One is it's super easy to make. They are super, super tasty. And you can make them ahead of time and you can freeze them. Or you can make the mix ahead of time, kind of like you do with the pancake mix. And then you can just make an individual one whenever you want. Biscuits are always great in our house in terms of just bulking up dinner and getting the calories in without that much steak. So we usually have a mason jar in the fridge or freezer filled with biscuit mix, just like we do for the egg mix and for the pancake mix. So, and then what you can do is you can make it that, this camera's coming down, I'm doing funny things, sorry. you can make the mix in advance, and like I said, you just add the liquid. You know how the pancake mix is a 1-to-1 ratio, like it's 60 grams of pancake mix to 60 grams of liquid. In this case, it's 2-to-1. So if you were doing 60 grams of biscuit mix, it would be 30 grams of the liquid. So in here, oh, and I did forget one thing. Where is my biscuits? There. Sorry. We are going to get the butter out of the fridge because we need that to be nice and cold. This. Hang on. Sorry, I'm off screen. So, we want 6 tablespoons of butter cut into cubes. And you want that butter to be nice and cold. If you don't have a food processor, you can easily, I think the best thing to do to try to get the butter distributed is to grate it, if it's cold, right over the dry mix. So that's, you guys can't see me. Let me turn on switch camera angles again. Sorry. So this is the butter. And I'm going to cut it into little squares. Okay, and now we're back here, and I had the angles all right when we had 3 cameras, and now they're a little bit off. So in here, we're going to add 2 cups of Cook for Love's baking mix. The baking mix, the recipe's on the site. It is just wheat starch, cake flour, and xanthan gum. Xanthan gum is used because the wheat starch does not have any gluten, and it needs something just to help hold it together. So that's the purpose of xanthan gum. It has a little bit of sugar, just 2 tablespoons. Some baking powder. We're estimating the class. It just kind of depends on how quickly we move, but it will probably be about 2 hours. Okay, so in here are all the dry ingredients, and I'm just going to pulse them quickly so they're nice and mixed together. And then I'm going to add the butter pats in there, and I'm going to break them up as I'm dropping them in. Okay. And because I'm doing another class tomorrow, and I'm not going to make the full batch today, I'm going to do the single batch, and I'll show you how to do that. Otherwise, we'll be swimming in biscuits in our house. So, we're just pulsing this. So it almost looks a little bit like cornmeal. The butter is nice and mixed in. I'm going to do an overhead shot of it in a second so you can see it. Okay. And so you can see here that there's no big clumps of butter left. And now if I was making the entire batch, this is when I would add all of the heavy cream and I would add all of the rice milk. But because I'm not going to make a full batch, I'm just going to do part of it. So, take this. And if I was doing a single biscuit, Molly likes larger biscuits. So I usually do, instead of making 11 of them, I usually make 8, which increases the fee to 32 milligrams, but you can make them whatever size you want. Just turn down those potatoes. Check on your cranberries. Mine just, all of the apple cider got absorbed a little too fast. So I have that turned off. My potatoes are still going. And I need a container. So what I'm going to do here is 50 grams of the mix. Okay, and 25 of liquid, and I have that there. Okay, and I'm going to mix it together. I don't have a fork here, hang on. What I love, I was talking about what I like about having this biscuit dough ready whenever I need it, in the freezer. It's also great if I don't form the biscuits. I can roll these out thinner, and they are a great topping for a pot pie. And if you look at the recipe online for the string bean casserole, a lot of that are some of the basis for the shepherd's pie. So if you have some of that left over, you could just add a little bit more liquid to it, a little bit more vegetables, and then you could have a leftover pot pie, which is, you always want to use up those leftovers if there are any. So I must have put a little too much liquid there because I can tell that that's a little too wet. So I'm going to have to add a little bit more of the mix. Okay. And then I just want some wheat starch here. Okay, and I just want to knead that a little bit, but not a lot. Pat it down. And where is my biscuit cutter? And then when you use a biscuit cutter, you want to go straight down. You don't want to twist because you want it to be a nice clean cut so that it can pop up better. So we've got a biscuit here, and then when I've got a little bit left over, I like to make little mini biscuits because my daughter's always taste testing. I also used to make little mini biscuits. Again, if I had the biscuit mix in my fridge, it was easy to do. They're great with lunch if you're having like a soup or something simple. It's fun to have little tiny biscuits. And when my daughter comes home from college, one of her favorite things is to have KFC, which is Kentucky Fried Cauliflower, with a little bit of mashed potatoes, gravy, and biscuits. It's one of her favorite comfort foods. Okay, so those are our biscuits ready for us. And we're going to put them to the side because we don't have the oven available yet. Okay, put those, where did I have the biscuits? There we go. So, all right, so that was biscuits. Super, super simple. Again, with that mix, you can roll it out thin. Sorry, let me switch camera angles. You can roll it out thinner, and you could use it as a topping for your pot pie. You can roll it out thin and make breakfast pockets with it. So I'll roll it out, and I will bake some of the excellent mix with some different vegetables, and I'll put that on top and sort of fold it over and seal it, and then bake that, and then it's a nice, easy thing for my daughter to have when she's in college, just to pop in the air fryer. So there's lots of different things you can do with that mix, if it's something that you like. So there we go, biscuits done. Super, super simple. We have got our turkey, and our turkey are the jerky, but we're not quite ready for that because our potatoes are not done. So we will move on. Our stuffing is baking. We will move on to a simple gravy, and because the stove angle is not working, I'm going to have to just bear with me for a minute while I bring something else up so you can see what I'm doing. 3 minutes before the class started, the camera stopped working, so I ran downstairs to get something, but I didn't have time to set it up. So this is an induction cooktop, which is super, super handy if you're traveling. This one's very, very big. They come smaller now. But whenever we were traveling and we were traveling by car, we would always throw this in. And if we were at a hotel or whatever, we would have an easy way to just cook things. So, okay, let me plug this in. All right. So, I know that I have been singing the praises of Bisto for quite some time. If you have not gotten it yet, I cannot recommend it enough. There is chicken flavored, there's a beef flavored, there's a vegetable one, there's all different ones, but it's a great thickener and it thickens while adding flavor. So if you don't have Bisto and you can't get it, you can get it online, but if you don't have it in time for Thanksgiving, I would just add a little bit more, maybe like a bouillon cube. You want a little bit more, a richer flavor in with your stock. So what we're doing here, pan is on. Remember, fat is flavor, so we're going to add a tablespoon of butter. This is for our quick gravy. Okay. Let that butter melts a little bit. Okay. Switch over, sorry, wrong angle. So the butter's melting. We're going to add in a cup of broth. Oops. And wait for that to come to a simmer. And because the bisto is seasoned, it has salt, it has everything in it, you usually don't need to add any more salt. Sometimes I'll add a pinch of pepper. Just letting that go. Does anybody have any questions? Nothing now, okay. And so there's two kinds of bisto. There is the granules, which is the one that we're using. And then there's one that you have to make a slurry with, which is kind of what you do with cornstarch, where you mix the cornstarch and water or broth together and then add it into something hot. But this one you just kind of add right to your hot stock. So we're going to do a teaspoon. In. I should have waited till it was a little bit hotter because it's not dissolving right away. And we use bisto for all of our gravies. It just is a really, really nice flavor. Mix that. And you can see there's still some granules in there, so you want to just keep stirring. Starting to get a little bit thick. Okay, someone wants to see the package of bisto, so while this is cooking, let me turn this down while I do that. Switch the angle. Can you see it there? So you can get it. Yeah, I have the chicken one. But you can get it if you've got a good a supermarket that has like decent international foods. If it has a good English and Irish section, that's usually where you'll find the bisto. So we are fortunate that we can find it at the local grocery store. Okay. So I'm looking at this, and I like my gravy thicker than this, so I'm actually going to add a little bit more. And the bisto is actually vegetarian, so it's nice to get those flavors in without getting any meat products in there. It's quite low in fee, and they're all of the flavors are on how much fee. Okay, let's go back. Let's see how it's thickening, and we're going to add some parsley. And this could sit in your fridge certainly for 2 days without a problem. And then you can just heat it up on Thanksgiving, or you can make it real quick on Thanksgiving Day if you have the time. I like to try to get as much done as possible beforehand, so I'm just heating things up on the day. There we go. And that that is the gravy done. Now, come on. That's a pretty simple recipe for me, right? Nice and fast. So you got biscuits, you got gravy, which are two key components to Thanksgiving, in my opinion. And the other thing that is, to me, super important is stuffing. So, let's see. Yep, that's done. Okay, someone was just asking whether or not you can freeze the ready-made biscuits. So what you would do at that point, after we've made them, is you would freeze them uncooked. And then you can pop them into the oven. I do find if they've been in the freezer for more than like a month or so, I find they still taste delicious, but they don't rise quite as much. So my recommendation, it's one of the reasons why I started doing just the biscuit mix. So that way I could just make them fresh each time, but whatever's easier for you. But just know that sometimes if it's been frozen for a while, you don't get quite the rise. But you can make them ahead. Okay. So we have our biscuits done already, and we have our gravy done already. And what we're going to work on now, we've got our stuffing bread toasting, but we're going to start making the other parts of that. So what we're going to do, let me find my stuffing somewhere here. What I tried to do in terms of organizing myself is I tried to have each recipe on one baking sheet, but then I got into a panic at the end because I couldn't get the phone and I don't know where I put anything. So give me a second. Oh, here it is. Here it is. So, oops. My stuffing ingredients. I'm not quite ready for this. Turn this off. Get rid of this. Way too many wires here. All right. Move this over. And move this back. Hang on. Someone asked the question about, again, Sarah's talking in my ear. So someone just asked, the biscuit mix is made, Alexa, timer off. That's the timer, I think, for our potatoes. So I'm just going to interrupt for a second. Nope, they need 5 more minutes. So the biscuit mix is the dry ingredients, which was the baking mix. There was a little bit of sugar, there was salt, there was baking powder, and the butter. They all get pulsed together in the food processor, or you grate the butter, ice cold butter, with a grater and mix it in. And then that goes in the fridge or the freezer, and that's the baking mix, the biscuit baking mix done. And then you would just add liquids as you needed it, and it's a 2-to-1 ratio. So 50 grams of mix would be about 25 grams of liquid. You'll get the feel for it, and you'll know, okay, it needs a little more or a little bit less, but that's the basic ratios. All right. So, we need, for our stuffing, we need some apple. So I'm going to peel, I like to do a Granny Smith apple. It's tart and it has a nice crunch to it. Nice and crisp. We don't need a lot because, again, for today, we're just making serving for 2, pretty much. Okay. Switch over. Okay. Okay. The apple. Slicing them that way, and turning them over this way. I need how much apple? Let me just double check the recipe because it's not my normal one. 60 grams. And I put my scale somewhere. Oh, there we go. So. apple. And now we can move this. Ingredients. Right. So now we're going to go back over here, and we're going to turn on our pan. And we are going to melt some butter in the pan. Rearrange a little bit so the camera angle is better. Okay. Perfect. All right. So, I'm melting some butter in the pan. And we are going to add our minced onions. Minced celery. We just want those to soften. And we want to add our shallots. Shallots are a nice addition. If you don't have them, it's okay, but they're sort of a mildy onion that have a little bit of a oniony garlic flavor. There's just something very, very nice about them. But if you don't have them, just add a little bit of extra onion. Okay. And I'm going to do a quick check on the potatoes. They are cooked. So I'm going to turn off the potatoes. Check on your potatoes, and if they're cooked, just turn them off, and we'll get back to them in a minute. And okay. So Sarah is telling me that she is on Cook for Love, and there's a review for Biscuits, and it's from my daughter, and it says, "At what temperature am I supposed to reheat these at? I'm giving you 1 star because you're ignoring me." And no doubt she did give me 1 star, right? And then someone here came to my defense because they don't know that this is how my daughter and I interact with one another, and told her to back off. That was just from Molly. That's pretty funny. Okay. So we're going to go back over here. So the onions and the celery and the shallots smell delicious, and they're starting to soften. And now what we're going to do is add just a little bit of our vegetable stock, because we want to get that reduced a little bit so the flavor is a little bit more intense. So you can see the liquid is starting to cook out a little bit, but we want it to be reduced to about half. What are everyone's favorite dishes that they make in terms of sides for Thanksgiving? Anybody have any? And are there any that you're looking for that Cook for Love has not adapted yet? Yes, that will not be, to be clear, that will not be ready for this Thanksgiving. So, yeah. Yeah, what would you like to see next year that we're missing is really the question. So into this, we're going to add our apples. Well, that is my timer, I believe, for the stuffing. I'm going to bump up the oven to the biscuit temperature, which Alexa timer off, which is 450 degrees. Give that a few minutes to heat up. So what we're looking for here is the apples to get a little bit soft, not too mushy, but a little bit soft. We're going to add our raisins that have been soaking in the apple cider. Keep that nice and plump. And listen, if you could easily make this stuffing into your main entree. If you did a roasted squash and you hollowed out the center and you could have it stuffed with the stuffing, that would be a delicious entree. If you didn't feel like making something else. Okay, now it's starting to get nice and soft. Okay. Now I'm going to throw the liquid in there. I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to add parsley and sage. And salt. Okay. And we're going to put the breadcrumbs right in there. And it's going to take them a while to absorb that liquid, but that's okay. And then what you can do from here is let it sit and absorb, but then you can just put it in a Ziploc bag and stick it in your freezer. And then it'll be ready for you on Thanksgiving. The other thing that I really like is you can bake it because it needs to get baked in a buttered dish. If you're trying to do portion control just to figure out fee amounts for Thanksgiving, because I know it can be overwhelming that day, is you can bake these in a cupcake tin. So you could grease the cupcake tin and then put in the exact amount that you want there. So that way, you know, depending on how many cupcakes full of stuffing were taken, you would know exactly how much fee was consumed. So that's a possibility. And if you're looking for something that is grain-free or you don't have bread, Amber has a really nice recipe on the site for cauliflower stuffing. So you could do that as well. And if your traditional stuffing doesn't have apples and it has something else, you can easily make this with carrots and without the apples, whatever way you want. This just happens to be my favorite flavors for Thanksgiving. Okay, so that is the stuffing done. I'm going to let it cool, and then I'm going to put mine in a Ziploc bag and pop it in the freezer. And then probably 2 days before Thanksgiving, I'll take it out of the freezer and put it in the fridge. And on Thanksgiving morning, I'll put it in a buttered dish, and I will bake it for about 30 minutes. Any questions? Someone just asked about the biscuit mix. The biscuit mix will keep in the fridge or freezer for, in the fridge certainly for at least a month, in the freezer for up to a year. So the same amount of time pretty much as the pancake mix or the excellent mix. So if I'm not going to use it within a month and a half, I will usually stick it in the freezer. And I've never had it go bad, but we also make biscuits fairly often. Okay, so now we have our biscuits done. We have our stuffing done. And we have biscuit stuffing and gravy done. Well, we're flying through. Okay. Let me just clean up a little bit here so you can see what I'm doing next. Does anybody have any questions? Nothing so far, okay. Normally I would put a piece of parchment on here for my biscuits, but honestly they're not right here, so I'm gonna put them on without it. So those are the biscuits. My oven is preheated, so I'm gonna pop them in. And they cook for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, let's say. If they were frozen, it was 20, so 15 minutes. Alexa, set timer for 12 minutes. I always like to check on things a few minutes before it's supposed to be ready. Okay. There we go. And now we're going to work on our vegetable patties. So everyone's potatoes are ready, the people who are cooking along. I'm just going to drain the potatoes. Someone asked how long the stuffing stays good in the freezer. I would imagine it would be good for at least 3 months in the freezer. It's a good idea to put them in, if you're making more than just a serving or two, if you put them in the little snack-sized Ziploc bags, you can just kind of keep them in there that way and then just pull out what you need. Okay. So, next up are our vegetable patties. Okay. All right. Now, I already roasted some Brussels sprouts because that's again a dish that I would have had, and I tried to make this recipe in terms of all the spices and seasonings that I have for different recipes into this. But you can the vegetables that you add the same amount of onion and the same amount of garlic and the same amount of potato, but the rest of it is flexible. You can add however much is in Brussels sprouts. You could add carrots, you could add broccoli, whatever your child likes. And patties. So, what I do, I'll be honest with you, after I do my onions and peppers, when I was doing my my stuffing, I would just take a couple of tablespoons of that out for this, just to make life easier. So, onion, celery. So the exact same thing that we did for the stuffing. So these vegetable patties are very, very similar in terms of taste and texture to Dr. Prager's. But you have the ability to introduce new flavors if you're making it yourself, new vegetables and everything else. So it's a great toddler food, especially when they get to that point when they really want to feed themselves. It's a quick and easy thing to do if you just use whatever vegetables you have on hand. Onion and the celery cooking. And down a little bit. And we're going to add the garlic. Just a second. And that's it for that. So take that off. And I'm going to remove this heater. Turn that off. That's off. And unplug it. And get rid of it. We don't need it. Alright. Bear with me. Anybody have any questions while I'm trying to untangle these cords? Someone's looking for a recipe for roasted Brussels sprouts? Sorry, Sarah's talking in my ear. Yes, Sarah's going to post the link to the person who asked how to do the Brussels sprouts. Sorry, I'm just trying to get rid of this. Thank you. So you can also just throw them in the air fryer. What I do is just take the Brussels sprout, cut it in half, put a little olive oil on it, and you can put it in the air fryer if you're just looking to make it quickly. But on Thanksgiving, we make a whole big tray of them, and there's a glazed Brussels sprout recipe on the site that is one of our favorites. So, okay. Now, oops, sorry about that. So, where did I put my ricer? Here it is. I love a ricer. It's not an absolutely necessary gadget, but it is fantastic for making super smooth mashed potatoes. You'll have absolutely no lumps in them. I think it's worth its weight in gold. But that's just me. So what we're going to do, let me switch our angle so you can see exactly what I'm doing. All right. First, we're going to add our potatoes, which we're going to mash. If you don't have a ricer, you're just going to use a fork or a masher. Okay. There we go. Spatula. Right. And in terms of making these for Thanksgiving, you can make these and freeze them. And if you want to remake them at Thanksgiving, if you're not cooking a lot right now, you can make them a few days beforehand and they'll keep in the fridge for a couple of days. So here are my roasted Brussels sprouts. I'm going to dice those up. When I was little, my mom used to make Brussels sprouts, and my mom is Irish, so her version of most vegetables were to boil the guts out of them, and she would boil Brussels sprouts, and I thought they were the most horrible things, and me and my sister would call them green meatballs, and now they're one of my favorite vegetables, especially when they're roasted. So there you go, everyone. Keep introducing those vegetables, even if they reject them in the beginning. Okay, so that's them diced up. If your kid has some sensory issues and is particular about chunks and things like that, you could always mince it in the food processor, but don't ever put your potatoes in the food processor. They get very gummy. But you can put your vegetables in there if you want to not have any lumps. But lumps are great if they are, if they don't have any sensory issues, because it helps develop a chew. So it's especially good for your toddler. So in here we're adding our onions and our garlic and our celery. Okay. That we just sauteed. And hang on. Make sure I have everything. And we're going to mix that up. So again, Brussels sprouts could be any vegetable. They could be carrots, they could be broccoli, they could be spinach, whatever you like. And this recipe is a little bit like Bubbles and Squeak, which is a British meal. That's kind of what gave me the idea for it. All right. And we are going to have, it is just a third of a cup of baking mix. It needs a little bit of extra xanthan gum, so just a quarter of a teaspoon. Add it in there. And that's just to dry out the mix a little bit. And we need some salt and some pepper in there. And then again, the reason why these herbs are in there, they're herbs that I'm always using at Thanksgiving. So we've got some sage, we've got some thyme, we've got some rosemary, and we have some fresh parsley. Okay. If I didn't have those vegetables on hand, it would be fine without them, especially if you have a little bit of parsley on hand. So you can see this is quite dry right now. Mix it around. All right. And we need to put some wheat starch down on our surface. So like that. Mix this again. So we're going to pat this down into about a 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch thick round. And this is when you can get fun and you can use different shapes. Excuse me, seconds. I like to use my little turkey on Thanksgiving. And a little wheat starch on it. A little dusting of wheat starch. And then you just kind of go down like this. So you see it there, and then just push down and pull away the excess. And sometimes you have to just clean it up a little bit. I hurt his head, hang on. Someone is asking about fresh herbs versus dried herbs. Fresh herbs do a significantly better flavor. If you don't have them and you use dried, that's fine. But I think for parsley in particular, the question was about parsley, I think fresh is always key. I think you can get away with certainly dried oregano without a problem, but I don't know, parsley and basil to me are two of the ones that fresh make a big, big difference. I think the thyme and the rosemary would be fine dried if you were adding it. But parsley, if you can get it fresh, get it fresh. Okay. So we get another turkey. Alexa, timer off. Anybody have any idea what I have that timer on for? Biscuits. The biscuits. Oh, and they're burned. Okay. Well, we're going to redo a biscuit because my oven was too hot and they got burned. Okay. Sorry, everyone. We're going to redo those biscuits. Good thing we have the time. I put them in my little oven, which is way too high. Okay. Sorry about that. And you're going to continue with making these patties. You can also, just so you know, just do it in a circle shape. I'm going to do two cute little turkeys, and the rest I'm just going to do circles because it's just quicker and easier. And depending on the age of your kid, it might or might not matter. And although this is not what Molly has for her entree, she's now 21, it is still something that she loves, and she'll be thrilled that there's some in the freezer for her. Okay. Anybody have any questions? Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. So I've got 6 patties here that we're just going to pan fry in a few minutes. Okay. I'll move those out of the way. And I'm going to quickly remake those biscuits. Someone just asked what Molly's entree for Thanksgiving was. We're actually making it tomorrow at the adult class. She loves cauliflower steak with I have to be honest with you, she recently has an aversion to mushrooms. They used to be one of her favorites. So I'll probably do caramelized onions for her, but it's, I normally do a roasted portobello mushroom, and I have that for all of the vegetarians. It's really, really nice. Okay. All right, biscuit. Scale. Who can find my scale? There we go, found it. All right. So, I'm going to remake that biscuit because that was a real flop because I wasn't paying attention. And the oven was a little too hot. Okay. Turn out my mix. Now, pardon me, I have to go back in the fridge to go get some rice milk and some heavy cream. Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. Okay. And my spatula is gone where? I don't know. Hang on, I gotta go get another fork. There it is. There, I found something. Okay. We're gonna mix this up again. And this time I can tell, before I added a little too much liquid, and I think I probably don't have quite enough here. Let's see. So you can kind of get a feel for it. Oh no, I think it's good. As you start mixing it and you start squeezing it. That's good. All right. So you see all of those crumbs? That lets me know that it was a little bit too dry. So I'm going to add a tiny bit more liquid to it. Okay, where's my biscuit cutter? There it is. I still, even when I have it just the right size, I still like to cut it down like that because I think it just makes it pop a little bit higher. And if there's a little extra left over, that just is a little mini one. And I'm going to put that on the pan and pop that in the oven. And I'm going to say, Alexa, set timer for 10 minutes, just so I can take a look at it. Okay. All right, let's see. Go back onto that screen. Okay. Biscuit done. Biscuit done. The vegetable patties are ready to fry. Okay. That out of the way. And now I need to get, I thought I was done with my induction cooker, but I still need it for this, so I'm going to have to go grab it again. Okay, excuse me. Hopefully our next class we will figure out how to get that other camera working. So I can be by the stove too. Alright. Okay. So we need another pan. Alright. Olive oil on here. Sorry, everyone. everyone. Those are my crazy dogs. We've got Lynn on. Hey, Lynn. And she was saying that her son, who's 26, still likes the turkey-shaped patty. Right. Some olive oil on there. Switch the camera. Okay. And you want these patties to have a decent amount of wheat starch on them. So I'm going to just dust them. A little more. And that is not quite hot enough. So you want that to be nice and hot. My husband just put the dog in the mudroom, which now she's really going to think there's someone here, and she's going to continue to bark. So ignore the background sounds. Okay. And you can hear that little bit of sizzle, so that's how you know it's hot enough. And you can see it sizzling around. Someone asked about the super fast gravy and storing it and how long it will last. The beauty of a super fast recipe is, ideally it means you can kind of make it whenever you want and make it fresh. But you could easily make it 2 days beforehand and just heat it up, or you could freeze it in, those trays that have the silicone sort of deep dish ones where it's like a giant ice cube, but it holds about 1/4 of a cup. You can also make a batch of it and put it like that, and then that way a quick gravy whenever you want, but it really is super, super easy to make, so you can kind of just make it on demand. I have a spatula here, now I can't find it. We're using our Halloween spatula. So it's about 3 minutes on each side. Another minute. It's not quite brown enough. We'll flip it back over. These are delicious. If you have a little kid, they're probably going to want to dunk it in ketchup or something like that. But they're fantastic with the gravy. But if your kid loves KFC, then make them KFC for Thanksgiving and have that with the gravy and the mashed potatoes and the stuffing. You go with what they like. I know that someone had asked a question beforehand about allergies, so I want to address that a little bit while I have a second. All of these recipes, if there is a dairy allergy, you can easily substitute the butter for a vegan butter. The biscuits, I would say, and I know that there are some of you out there who have tried it and you would be able to tell me better. I would say that some of the vegetarian butters or margarines might melt a little faster than you wanted to, and the biscuit might not be as flaky, but I think that you could probably do half of the vegan butter and then do half of the vegan shortening, and then that would be enough to kind of keep it crisper, because margarine tends to melt at a lower point than butter, so sometimes baked goods are not quite as flaky, and sometimes they spread a little bit more, but that would address that. So if you look here, this guy is the brownness you're looking for. someone was asking that if you make these patties ahead, what is the best way to reheat them? It depends on how far ahead you're going to go. If I was making them, I would, because it's all the ingredients that I'm doing for Thanksgiving, it's got the potatoes, and I'm making mashed potatoes, it has the onion and celery, and I'm making stuffing, and it has the Brussels sprouts, and I'm making Brussels sprouts. I would probably do it the day that I'm prepping all that stuff. But if I wanted to just have it done, just so it's one less thing to worry about, oops, that got a little burnt, then I would make them 2 days beforehand and have them in the fridge, and then just pan fry them that day. But if you've already fried them, you can freeze them and then just heat them up in the air fryer. All right, and they're done. So those are delicious. All right, and those are done. That's the jerky finished. Let me take a quick peek at our biscuits. Oh, that's much better. Okay. Awesome. And I'm going to turn this off. Okay, so we have our patties done. We have our stuffing done. And we have our biscuits are going to be out of the oven in a minute, the ones that are hopefully not burned. And then let me get rid of this again. And then we're going to come up next with our dessert. So I have been trying for I don't know how many years to make a low-protein cheesecake. And you know, I fiddled with agar, I fiddled with kudzu, I tried to add some cream cheese but still keep it at an acceptable fee amount, and I just couldn't get it right. And then when BioLife came out with their cream cheese, I was so excited. I was like, oh my god, I'm finally going to be able to make Molly a cheesecake. And I made this delicious batter. It tasted so good. And then when I went to bake it, the BioLife just doesn't bake well. It turned it was lovely and creamy, and it turned almost opaque, and then it just got really, really weird and liquidy. So I was very, very sad, and then I realized I could probably do a no-bake cheesecake, which is where this recipe has come from. And it is delicious. So just give me a second while I clean up a few things here, because I need to use my food processor again, and it's a little dirty. So hang on. Does anybody have any questions while I'm doing this? Okay. So that is my biscuit mix, which I'm going to just stick in the freezer for later. And Molly will be very, very happy because she's in college now, so she'll be very happy to have that in her freezer. So that is done. Now, okay, this is going to take me a couple of minutes because this is a big old tray. Hang on. That's my timer for my biscuits. Bring this tray over. That's all of the stuff for this. Oh. So, there's the biscuit the way it should be. It's got a nice height on it. It's got some nice browning. And it looks really, really good. Alexa, timer off. Off the oven. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about these no-bake cheesecake bites. I know that we have got a lot of people on who probably are dealing with higher and lower tolerances. So what I've been trying to do is do what I'm calling flexify in recipes, saying, okay, if this is too much for you, this is what you would do. If this is too low for you, this is what you do. And we're really working, because we work with different inborn errors of metabolism and people who responded to Kuban. You know, there are some of us who are working with 5 grams of protein, and there are people who are working with over 20 grams. So I want to try to figure out flexibility there, because sometimes still the typical recipe is too high, and sometimes my recipes might be too high, and but a low protein one might be too low for someone. So if you have a high tolerance, don't bother making a graham cracker crust. Buy one if you can afford the protein. That will make life a lot easier. I use whatever crumbly crackers I have. For this particular recipe, I really like graham crackers. I also really like if I have gingerbread cookies in my freezer, those are great. And any sort of crispy cracker will work. So first we're going to make the filling, the cookie base, which is 20 of Cook for Love's graham crackers, or whatever cookie of your choice. That's going to go in the food processor. Hang on. This got a little my butter that was melted. It's hardened up. So if you haven't melted your butter, you can just do that now. So you want 6 tablespoons of melted butter. Okay. I'm just going to take everything off of here so I have the space to work. Someone just asked, what are they doing wrong if the biscuits don't rise like that? Couple of possibilities. Make sure that your baking powder is nice and fresh, because if it is old, it won't work as well. Make sure that your butter is nice and cold, because that will help proof it up. And make sure they don't sit too long before they go in the oven. And that should make them proof up. All right. So, as I'm typing, let's see. That goes there. That goes there. Bring the food processor over. All right. So, in here are the graham crackers. Because we're dealing with ginger, plug it in, that would help. It's in the sink, that's not good. Because we're dealing with pumpkin flavors, I like to add a little more punch to the graham crackers by adding just a little bit more cinnamon and a little bit of ginger to them. Just to get a little bit more flavor in there. Hang on. Okay. If you don't have a food processor here, you can have them in a Ziploc bag and just pound them until they're crumbs. Okay. So you can see here that they are all crumbs right now. Okay, so to that we're going to add a 1/4 cup of sugar, brown sugar, and 1/4 cup of brown sugar. We're going to add the ginger and a little bit of cinnamon. Pulse that. Mix it up. And I put my butter in my warm oven just because I melted it earlier, but it's solidified. Add that in. Okay. Oops, looks like something broke. And that's it. That's our crumb crust. It does not need to be baked. Once it sits in the fridge, it's going to get like a nice cold crispness to it. So we're going to set that aside. And now you're going to have to bear with me again while I set up the KitchenAid mixer over here. So this can go away. And right back. In. Okay, so for this, we are going to start by whipping cream. Now again, before we were talking about flexity and allergies. If you are dealing with a dairy allergy, you could easily use So Delicious Cocoa Whip, a frozen one, just bought, and that would be great. If you want it to be lower in protein, you can also use that. You can use Cool Whip if you want. Sorry, there goes one of my microphones. But I prefer heavy cream if you can afford this. If you can afford the faith. And again, if you wanted higher in protein, you could easily add Philadelphia cream cheese to this. So this is going to whip, and it's going to whip for a while, and it's going to be really, really loud. So just bear with me. Okay, get the heavy cream from the fridge. Okay. The heavy cream is going in, and that is 3/4 of a cup. Okay, and up, and someone just asked if it was fresh ginger or dried spices, dried ginger. Say that again. Okay, the question was whether or not we were using vegan heavy cream. No, we're using regular heavy cream. Heavy cream is actually not terribly high in protein or fat. Again, if it's too high for you, you can use Cocoa Whip or something like that. But heavy cream is only about 1 milligram per gram. So this has 3/4 of a cup, so you're getting 180 milligrams total from the heavy cream in this particular recipe. So I use cream, I do use a little bit of flour, and I do use egg. Not a lot of any of those things. Not in this particular recipe, but just in general, because I think that it's workable within the diet, and it adds significant flavor. While this is whipping up, I'm going to turn it off just so you can hear me. I am going to take my pudding, and I use the cheesecake flavor. You can certainly use vanilla as well, but the cheesecake just enhances that cream cheese flavor. So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to put it in a bowl, and I'm going to add just a quarter cup of rice milk or your favorite non-dairy milk, just so that it dissolves. It's going to be super thick, that's okay. So that's what we're doing in here. And then I'm going to turn the blender back on because it's got another at least 2 or 3 minutes to whip up that cream. Sorry. So this is not quite whipped enough, but I want you just to see the consistency. Let's see if we can get this camera angle right. So, you know what, I'm going to take it out of here. So if you look here, this is what I would call a medium peak. So it is just not quite as firm as I want it to be. So I'm going to let it whip for another 2 minutes. If anybody has any questions, you got to be a little bit careful here. You don't want it to turn into butter, but you want it to be close. And I have done that before. You can actually start to see as heavy cream gets thicker, it gets to be the right consistency. When you're whipping it, I'm going to put that over here. You can see how now it's quite thick. That's what we're looking for. So after that's been done, you're going to take the heavy cream out and you're going to put it in a bowl and stick it in the fridge while we finish this off. And again, this could be Cool Whip thawed, or it could be So Delicious Cocoa Whip, or you could do the vegan versions of heavy cream, which uses coconut milk. There's recipes for that online if you're looking to make it lower in protein or you're dealing with other allergies. So, oop, I'm on the wrong one, sorry. Okay, so this is the heavy cream. It's going to go in the fridge while we get everything else sorted. asked if I froze the bowl before whipping the cream. If I was more organized, I would, but no, I did not. There's no room in my freezer for a bowl at the moment. Okay. Someone just asked if I ever made the veggie patties with yucca or cassava. I have fiddled and done half and half when I've needed it to be lower if Molly was sick and her levels were on the higher end. I haven't tried full yucca. I would imagine it would be good. It might be a little bit starchier, and those of you who don't know, yucca or cassava is probably about, and Sarah, you're going to have to look it up and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's about a quarter of the protein of a potato. And it's a great substitute if you need something that's lower, and it makes delicious fries, genuinely delicious fries. All right, so now what I'm doing is I am taking Violife cream cheese. I know that some people said they were having a hard time finding it. We have been finding it in all of our supermarkets lately, which is amazing, not just the health food stores. And you can use Tofutti and you can use Trader Joe's vegan cream cheese. They just have a little bit more protein in them, so you just have to adjust the fee. But Violife is, there is a store locator if you go online and you can find it, and hopefully you can get it somewhere near you. So in here we are, let me just see if I can possibly adjust this camera so that it is right. It keeps sinking down. I don't know what's happening to it. Let's see. I can get it up a little bit higher. Tighten it. Lefty loosey, righty tighty, is that right? I think. There we go. Let's see if that helps. Keep it at that angle. All right, so that way maybe we can look in a little bit at times. So in here, I put 2 containers of the Violife cream cheese, better than cream cheese, and we want to whip that up. Nice and fluffy. I want to scrape down the sides of the bowl. And we want to add into here the powdered sugar, the brown sugar, the pumpkin, and again, you want to use just pumpkin puree, not pumpkin pie mix. And then we want to add cinnamon, ginger, cloves. My sister weighed these out, and I'm looking at this, and I'm like, that's not a quarter teaspoon of cloves. Hang on. Cloves and nutmeg. And this was the pudding mixed with a quarter cup of non-dairy milk. And that's going to go in there too. Pudding's going to help really set it nicely. And somewhere over here is vanilla. There it is. And vanilla, and there should be a tiny bit of salt, which I don't see here, so let me just get that. Excuse me, cat. Even sweet things need a pinch of salt. Okay, and we're going to turn this on. want here are no lumps of cream cheese in there. And right now I can still see some lumps. So I'm going to scrape the bowl. Great. So let's move this out of the way. Now what we need to do is fold our nice whipped cream into this mix. We don't want to mix it aggressively. We want to just use the spatula because we put a lot of work into getting that air in there and making it nice and light, and that's the key for this. So if we mix it too much, we're going to deflate the heavy cream. Okay. We get the heavy cream out of the fridge. Now, for this recipe, we're making individual pumpkin cream cheese bites. You could easily make one large cheesecake, so you would just put it in a springform pan instead, and you could do it that way, or you can even get a little creative here. You could do, you could take your whole graham crackers and you could dip them in coffee and a liqueur and layer them in a pan and then put a cup of the mix on top and repeat that 3 or 4 times and have a really nice tiramisu for the holidays. You can use this filling. It's so delicious. You could certainly just eat it on its own, or you could serve it with cinnamon sugar chips, tortilla chips. You could use it as a filling for the pumpkin spice cake, which is one of my favorite cakes. You could use the pumpkin spice cake, and you could instead of doing a bundt pan, you would do it in 2 9-inch rounds and use this as the filling and the icing on top. Excuse me. You could also do whoopie pies and use this as the filling for it. So there's a lot of different options here. And if you look here, I'm trying really hard just to kind of fold. And by folding, you just kind of lift and come over. You just don't want to deflate that air. These bites freeze beautifully. So you can make them today, put them in your freezer, and put them in your fridge the night before Thanksgiving, and they will be all set to serve to your guests. My hope, and it's only a hope, there's no promises here, I'm hoping to use this filling this year and try to do a pumpkin roll. I tried it last year, and I used the pumpkin spice cake recipe that's on the site, but it cracked an awful lot, so I want to play with it a little bit this year. It tasted delicious, but it needs a little work. So I'm hoping to have time this week coming, but no promises. Excuse me. Okay. So you can see that this is getting all. You don't want to have streaks in it. You want it to be kind of homogeneous. And, oh, I'm on the wrong angle. There I am thinking you're looking at what I'm doing. Sorry. So to fold it in, I just lifted and went over like that in a slow motion. And now it's all one color and ready to go. Okay. So for these bites, hang on. So I bought mini cheesecake pans, which I've had for years. I love them for making brownie and blondie bites and different things like that. The reason why you want a pan like this is because once it sets, You want something like here, you put something in there and you kind of can lift it out, and then you're not going to, the batter's not going to get all funky. If you don't have a pan like this, you're going to have to line your mini muffin pans. Otherwise, it's going to stick. So, in here, I am going to switch over, add a tablespoon. I'm sorry, 2 tablespoons. Oh, 1 tablespoon. I thought I was right. Okay. So, I'm going to add a tablespoon of this mix, which is the cookie crumbs. Okay, this is about 10 grams of mix. And we're going to keep going and fill up all those pans. And what I should have done was do this and put it in the freezer for 10 minutes, but it's okay. It'll be all right with that. And the key here is to take this and really press down so that it's packed in there. Now you can, if you have a tamper like this, that's the easiest thing to do, but if not, just use a spoon and just push it down in there. And if you had put it in the freezer, it wouldn't stick to the batter, but I didn't put it in the freezer. So. Someone asked if this tool came with the cheesecake pan. It didn't. I bought it. But you can just push down with an offset spatula the back of the spoon. I just happened to have it, so I used it. Cookie scoops are quite possibly my favorite gadget of all times. All the different sizes, they're great. They just kind of gives you an even amount for everything. So you want about 2 tablespoons or 60 grams, 30 grams of this mix in each little cup. And that is and then you're going to let these set in the fridge for at least 2 hours, ideally 8. So I let them sit in the fridge overnight, and then in the morning I put them in the freezer in a protected Tupperware dish so they wouldn't get smushed, because my freezer is a disaster. So you kind of want to smooth these out a little bit. And this will make 30 of these bites. Let me just get a spoon and smooth them out. Okay. And then you're going to keep going. And you'll get 30 of these. But like I said, this would be delicious just as a parfait. It would be delicious with just some graham crackers crumbled in. You could serve it as a dip. It tastes really, really good. I don't know if anyone's making it with me, but definitely give it a taste right now. Okay. I want that as smooth as possible, but it's okay if it's not perfect. And then they sit in the fridge. So good. So good. All right. That's setting in the fridge. And then hang on. we have our stuffing done. We have our nuggets done. Our veggie patties. We've got our gravy done. Put a little bit of that on there. And we have our biscuits that are delicious. And Molly's going to be sad she's not here to be the taste tester. So, there you go. There's your Thanksgiving prep. It's really, really good. That gets you through some of your main dishes. Does anybody have any questions in terms of what we've done or anything else for Thanksgiving? I will tell you this. Thanksgiving was, before Molly was diagnosed, Thanksgiving was my favorite holiday. It was one of those times when you just got together with family and it was all about being together and enjoying a great meal. After she was diagnosed, I think it became my least favorite holiday for a few years. And then I kind of realized that, yes, it is about the food when you can't have any of it, but there are ways of making it better. And all the recipes that we have, with the exception of the turkey, are things that Molly can have. So it just makes it a shared experience for everybody, and Thanksgiving is back amongst my top holidays again. So you'll get there eventually if you're not there yet. And if you need anything or you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. It's Brenda at cookforlove.org. And I'm here, and always, or if you're not part of our Facebook page, I highly recommend you join it. There's really an amazing group of people who will help guide you and offer what they've done and what they've tried. And remember, if you haven't been to our site, it's www.cookforlove.org. It's free. You just need to sign up. And we are now grateful to be under the umbrella of PKU News. So all of our recipes have been tested through How Much Fee. And you know that the information is valid and you can be comfortable with the recipes. Any questions? I needed a drink to just even process that one. So the question that Sarah was asking me, that someone typed, is, what do you do when you're navigating the holidays with others and it involves a lot of travel? It depends on how understanding your family or the person whose house is that you're going to, how understanding they are. It's really, really easy to make little substitutes. Like there's, if you look for a Cook for Love's recipe for mashed potatoes, instead of using milk, you use rice milk and a little bit of heavy cream, and they're just as delicious. It's something that is a super easy switch for a host to do for you, and you can ask people for help. If we're going for the holidays, the meals that I prepare here, if we were going someplace else, that is what I would bring. Because I would know that Molly could have some of the vegetables that were being offered, that there was a dessert then that I had for her, and she would be set. It wouldn't be everything, which is how I like it. I like when it's, she can have the string bean casserole, she can have the butternut squash and everything else. But you have to ask for help. And if there are grandparents that are out there, and aunts and uncles and other people who are on watching this, thank you. You have no idea what it means to us as parents to have someone who's interested and someone who's willing to compromise a little bit. Thanksgiving is a weird holiday. Everyone has their favorite dishes and their set things, and to be flexible on that can be kind of tough. Like I know, just from a low protein perspective, I know every time I try to cut a dish, I get complaints from people like, no, you have to make that. That's my favorite. That's my favorite. And people are funny like that, this is our string bean casserole that we've always had. Well, if you make yours and you bring it and they realize it's just as tasty and they're not sacrificing anything, hopefully they'll ask for the recipe next time and try to help. But if you're traveling far, all of these recipes that we made will travel pretty well. And then they just need to be heated up. I would bring an air fryer with you if your host doesn't have one, so that you have a space where you can just heat things up quickly. Any other questions? Someone is asking about broccoli slaw. They love broccoli slaw salad, and they were wondering how to count it. Sarah, you would have to probably help me out with this one, but I would imagine, first of all, in how much fee, you can enter in recipes. And for the slaw and Sarah's in my ear, so she might be able to answer this question. I would imagine that the floret and the stock are the same. Am I correct? Yes. Yeah, so the floret and the stalk are the same, so you would just count that as broccoli, as that ingredient, and then you can add them up on how much fee. And it will tell you exactly what's not only in the recipe, but in the serving, and it'll also calculate the calories for you and everything else. Any other questions? Okay, we'll give you guys another couple of minutes while I finish eating my veggie patty, which is delicious. Oh my God, it's really so good. It's my lunch. Nope, nothing else? Okay. It seems like we are out of questions. I want everyone to remember that there are people behind the scenes that make these things happen. I'm very, very happy to volunteer my time, but you keep in mind that PKU News we've got a lot of people out there with a lot of great ideas, and we really need your help. We really need your support. So think about us, especially on Giving Tuesday. Is that right? Giving Tuesday? And donate to PKU News. We are here for you. We have a million ideas of different things to help with the diet, and we just need the funding, and so we can hire the people to make it happen. So help support us, and we'll continue to offer things like this. And I hope you all have a great Thanksgiving, and I hope Thanksgiving becomes or remains one of your favorite holidays. And if you need anything, I'm going to have a lot of people at my house on Thanksgiving, so know that I'm usually not online that day, so please look through recipes, and if you have any questions, ask them beforehand. But hope you have a great Thanksgiving, and thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate your support. Have a good night. And